She traveled 6 hours by bus, with her last bit of money, to see the sister she hadn't heard from in over a year. The sister she sacrificed everything for. She had no idea that in the next 5 minutes, her heart would be shattered into 1,000 pieces. That's Mercy, Grace's younger sister, the one Grace raised, the one Grace worked herself to the bone for. Mercy looked toward the entrance and saw Grace and Daniel being escorted in by the gate man. Her face went from confusion to recognition to panic to cold rage. Watch her face closely. You see that? She knows exactly who that is. When Grace saw her sister, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, she ran with open arms, tears of joy flowing down her cheeks. Mercy! Oh, thank God. My dear sister. We've missed you so much. It's been a whole year, and I was so worried. Who let these pigs into my house? Mercy screamed, her voice dripping with venom as she stepped back. Grace froze mid-step, her arms still outstretched, her face crumbling. Pigs. She called her own sister a pig. Mercy, Grace called softly, her voice breaking and confused. It's me. Grace, your sister. I have no sister, Mercy interrupted coldly. I grew up in an orphanage, alone. I don't know this woman. Daniel, the little boy, clung to Grace's leg, frightened and crying. No, Mercy, please, it's me, Grace cried desperately, tears streaming down her cheeks. I raised you. I took care of you. How can you say you don't know me? James, baby. Mercy ran to her fiancé as he entered. Call security. This crazy woman is harassing me. How? How does someone do this? How does a woman look her own sister in the eye, the sister who gave up everything for her, and pretend she's a stranger? The answer? Let me take you back 9 years, to where this story really begins. To the moment Grace made a choice that would cost her everything. Hello, family. Welcome to Diary of a Storyteller. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful, emotional, and heartwarming stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into this beautiful story. This is a story about 2 sisters. One who gave everything, and one who forgot everything. There are some people in this world who love so deeply, they forget to save a piece of themselves. This is a story about one such soul, a story about sacrifice, betrayal, and the painful price of shame. Grace was 17, Mercy was 16, and on that cold morning, they buried their parents and every dream they'd ever had. 2 orphaned girls left alone in a cruel world that doesn't wait for grief to pass. But life wasn't done testing them. Mercy, still a child herself, had been taken advantage of by a man who'd promised to help them. Now she carried a burden no 16-year-old should bear. Sister, what will we do? I'm pregnant, Mercy sobbed. We have no parents, no money. Everyone will call me. They'll say, Listen to me, Mercy, Grace interrupted with tears in her eyes. You're only 16. Your life isn't over. I will take care of this baby as my own. Can you hear it in her voice? That fierce determination masking absolute terror. Grace was just 17, barely more than a child herself. But she'd made a decision that would cost her everything. But sister, you're only 17, Mercy said desperately. You wanted to become a nurse. You had plans. My dreams can wait, Grace replied strongly with tears in her eyes. You will finish secondary school, go to university, and make something of yourself. This baby will have a mother who can provide. I promise you. And Grace never broke her promise. 6 months later, after Mercy had already delivered her beautiful son, Grace decided it was time for her to further her education. Go, study hard, make us proud. I'll come back for him, sister. When I finish school, Shh, we'll talk about that later, Grace said gently, hiding the tears in her eyes. For now, just focus on your education. Mercy left for school that day, believing she'd return to repay her sister's kindness. But sometimes, success has a way of making us forget the hands that lifted us. 9 years. Grace had worked every back-breaking job the village offered. Farming, washing, selling firewood, anything to put food on the table and keep Daniel in school. She'd become more mother than sister, more ghost than woman. "Mama, when will Auntie Mercy call again?" Daniel, the little boy, asked innocently. Ah, that question. The one that had been haunting Grace for months. A full year of silence from the sister she'd sacrificed everything for. Grace paused mid-stir, her hand trembling slightly. She forced her face into a calm expression before turning to him. "Soon, my son. She's very busy with her new job in the city," she replied, trying to cover her worry. "It's been a whole year, Mama." Grace coughed suddenly, a deep, rattling cough that shook her thin frame. She covered her mouth with a cloth. Daniel looked frightened. Grace had been sick for years. The grief of losing her parents, the stress of raising a child alone, the malnutrition from giving Daniel the bigger portions. It had all taken its toll. But she'd never told Mercy. How could she? She had to be strong. She had to be enough. She quickly composed herself, forcing a smile. "I know, Daniel, but I have her address. Maybe it's time we visit her." Grace didn't know it yet, but this decision would break her heart in ways poverty never could. Grace and Daniel sat on a crowded, worn bus. Grace clutched a crumpled piece of paper with an address written in Mercy's handwriting, which she gave her when they were still in touch with each other. She stared out the window, hope and anxiety playing across her face. She coughed again into a cloth, this time with small spots of blood. She quickly hid it from Daniel. The bus ride took 6 hours. 6 hours of Grace imagining the reunion. Would Mercy cry with joy? Would she embrace them? Would she finally meet her son, really meet him, and take them into her new life? "Mama, are you sick?" Daniel asked with concern, slightly touching Grace's arm. She smiled weakly, stroking his hair. "Just tired from the journey, my dear." Grace was dying. She knew it. And this trip wasn't just about reconnecting. It was about making sure Daniel would be cared for when she was gone. "Mama, look! Everything is so big!" Daniel screamed with joy as the bus passed some tall buildings. Grace watched her son's excitement and felt a pang of guilt. This world of opportunity, this was what she'd worked for, what Mercy was supposed to give back to them. But as the bus pulled into the city, a cold feeling settled in Grace's chest. Something felt wrong. This couldn't be right. The address must be wrong. How could Mercy, her little sister from the village, live in a place like this? Grace whispered the address to herself, checking to see if she got it right. Number 47, Holland Heights. This is it. Daniel stood in awe. "Mama, is this Auntie Mercy's house? It's like a palace." Oh, it was Mercy's house, all right. And Grace was about to discover just how far her sister had climbed and how much she'd left behind. Grace approached the gate nervously, smoothing down her worn dress. Mr. Kofi, the gateman in a crisp uniform, stopped her with a raised hand. "Madam, you cannot enter here. This is a private residence." The gateman saw what everyone in the city saw. A poor village woman in faded clothes, probably begging or selling something. He didn't see the woman who'd starved herself so her sister could eat. He didn't see the hero standing before him. Grace trembled with fear, but managed to speak, her voice desperate. "Please, sir, my sister lives here. Mercy Mensa. I've come from the village to see her. We haven't spoken in a year, and I need to see her. Please." Mr. Kofi looked skeptical, almost laughing. "Madam Mercy has no sister from any village. Please leave before I call security." And there it was, the first crack in Grace's hope. No sister from any village. What had Mercy told these people? Daniel tugged on Grace's worn dress, frustrated. "Is Auntie Mercy inside? Mama says she looks just like me." Mr. Kofi looked at Daniel's face carefully, then glanced back toward the mansion. Something in the child's features made him pause. A resemblance he couldn't quite place. The same eyes, the same nose. And suddenly, he wasn't so sure anymore. He sighed heavily. "Wait here." He opened the gate reluctantly. If only he'd kept that gate closed. If only he'd spared Grace what was coming. But fate doesn't work that way. Mercy had made it. From village orphan to city elite. She'd become everything Grace had sacrificed for her to be. Educated, successful, beautiful, rich. But somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten the most important lesson, where she came from. Mercy looked up and froze mid-step, her eyes locked with Grace's. For one moment, just one heartbeat, recognition flashed across her face, followed by panic, then something darker. Calculation. She knew. Oh, she knew exactly who was standing in her mansion, and that's what made what happened next unforgivable. "Mercy!" Grace called out emotionally, voice breaking, rushing towards Mercy with outstretched arms. "Oh, my dear sister. Thank God you're safe. We've been so worried. It's been a whole year, and who let these pigs into my house?" Mercy screamed, stepping backwards dramatically, her face contorted with false anger. Pigs. She called her own sister a pig. Grace stopped dead, her arms falling to her sides. The hope drained from her face. Daniel hid behind her, frightened and confused. "Kofi, I'm calling security. Get them out. Out." Look at Mercy's face. Those of you watching, look carefully. See that flicker of guilt she's desperately trying to hide behind manufactured outrage? That's shame. That's what happens when success makes you forget your humanity. James, Mercy's fiancé, entered from another room, concerned. "Mercy, darling, what's happening? Who are these people?" he asked gently but alarmed. This woman." She pointed at Grace with trembling finger, her voice dripping with disdain. "She forced her way in claiming to know me. I've never seen her before in my life." Liar. Mercy was a liar, and watching her sister's face crumble, you'd think even she would feel the weight of that lie. But shame is a powerful drug. Grace stood stunned, tears forming, voice barely a whisper. "Mercy, it's me. Grace, your sister. How can you?" "I have no sister. I grew up in an orphanage, alone. I don't know what scam you're trying to pull, but—" Mercy interrupted coldly and convincingly. "No, Mercy, please! It's me! I raised you! I took care of your—" Grace became desperate now, her voice rising. She stopped abruptly, glancing down at Daniel with panic. She couldn't say it. Not here. Not like this. Even in her heartbreak, Grace protected Mercy's secret. That's the difference between them. "I sacrificed everything for you to go to school. I worked day and night. I went hungry so you could eat. How can you not remember?" Grace continued, her voice breaking completely. "You see, she's clearly disturbed. Delusional. James, please handle this before she gets violent." Mercy turned to James, playing the victim, touching his arm. But James wasn't a fool. He looked between the two women. He saw the genuine anguish on Grace's face. He saw the defensive posture of Mercy's body. And most tellingly, he looked at the little boy and saw Mercy's eyes staring back at him. "Ma'am, I think there's been some mistake. Mercy has told me she has no family. Perhaps you're confusing her with—" James spoke slowly to Grace, kind but uncertain. Grace collapsed to her knees, coughing violently, body shaking. Please, please, I just need to talk to her. I'm sick. I don't have much time. Daniel knelt beside her, terrified, his small hands trying to steady her. Mama! Mama, breathe! Daniel cried out. This is what desperation looks like. A dying woman on her knees, begging for acknowledgement from the person she gave her life for. She's clearly unwell. Mercy, we can't just throw a sick woman out onto the... James moved forward, concerned. Wait. Mercy interrupted sharply, but then her eyes calculated something. What was going through Mercy's mind in that moment? Was it compassion? Guilt? Or something else entirely? Mercy approached Grace slowly, looking down at her with cold eyes. When she spoke, her voice was devoid of warmth. You want to stay? Fine. We need a new housemaid. You can work here. Minimum wage. Food and a room in the servants' quarters. Those are my terms. Mercy spoke slowly, cruelly. A maid. She offered her own sister, the woman who raised her, who sacrificed everything. A job as her maid. I'll do anything. I just want to be near you. To see you. To know you're okay. Grace looked up through tears, somehow still hopeful. Do you hear that? Even now, even after being called a pig and denied, Grace's only concern was being near her sister. That's love. Foolish, beautiful, heartbreaking love. Good. Kofi will show you to your quarters. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Mercy turned away, satisfied. James looked deeply uncomfortable but said nothing. He glanced at Daniel, then at Grace, confusion and pity crossing his face. James was a good man. He didn't understand what he'd just witnessed, but he knew it wasn't right. That knowledge would haunt him in the weeks to come. A tiny room, no bigger than a closet, with a single thin mattress on the floor, a bucket for washing, and a small window. Grace and Daniel sat together on the mattress. Grace was crying silently, trying to hide it from her son, but her shoulders shook. That night, Grace cried for the first time in 9 years. Not when their parents died, not when she went hungry, not when villagers mocked her for having a child so young. But now the dam broke. Mama, why was Auntie Mercy so mean to you? Doesn't she remember us? Daniel wiped his mother's tears with small hands, confused. I don't know, my son. I don't know what happened to her, but she's still your auntie. We must be patient. Maybe she's just confused. Grace struggled to speak through tears. Even now, Grace made excuses for Mercy. That's what love does. It blinds us to the truth, even when the truth is standing right in front of us, calling us pigs. When you're better, can we go home to the village? Daniel asked innocently. Soon, baby. Soon. Grace pulled him close, kissing his forehead. But Grace knew she'd never see the village again. She'd come to the city to die, to hand Daniel over to his real mother before it was too late. She just didn't know it would be this painful. And so began Grace's final chapter, a chapter of humiliation, exhaustion, and invisible suffering. Grace scrubbed marble floors on her hands and knees. Mercy walked past in high heels, talking on her phone, stepping around Grace without even glancing down. Every day, Mercy walked past her sister as if she were furniture, not a person, not family, just nothing. Grace in the mansion's kitchen, cooking an elaborate meal, sweat on her brow. She coughed violently into her elbow, then continued cooking. The coughing got worse. The blood in her handkerchief got darker. But Grace didn't complain. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She needed to stay close to Mercy. For Daniel. Grace served dinner to Mercy and James at a long dining table. She placed plates down carefully. Mercy didn't acknowledge her. James glanced at Grace with growing concern. James started to notice things, The way Mercy refused to make eye contact with the maid. The way Daniel's face looked eerily similar to his fiancée's. The way Grace looked at Mercy with such profound sadness. Daniel did homework alone in the servants' quarters by a single light bulb, while other children's laughter could be heard from outside. Daniel grew quieter. He didn't understand why they'd left their small but happy home for this cold mansion, where his mother was treated like dirt. Grace in her tiny room at night, looking at an old, faded photo of her and young Mercy smiling together, arms around each other. She touched Mercy's face in the photo and cried silently. At night, Grace would look at old photos and wonder, "Where did I lose you, sister? When did your heart turn to stone?" Grace collapsed while cleaning a window, catching herself on a table, breathing heavily. She looked around to make sure no one saw, then forced herself to stand and continue working. She was dying. Faster now, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. Not until she knew Daniel would be safe. Lush garden with flowers and a fountain. Daniel sat alone on a bench, looking sad, throwing pebbles into the fountain. James approached, loosening his tie, and sat beside him gently. James was a wealthy man, but he'd grown up poor. He recognized suffering when he saw it. And this child was suffering. "Hello there, Daniel, right?" James spoke warmly. Daniel nodded quietly. "Yes, sir. How old are you?" "8, sir." 8 years old. James did the math quickly in his head. He and Mercy had been together for 3 years. Before that, she'd told him she'd spent years building her career after university. The timeline was suspicious. "Your mother? She's worked as a maid before?" James asked carefully, gently. Daniel shook his head. "No, sir. In the village, Mama worked in the farms. She sold firewood, too, and vegetables at the market. She worked very, very hard." "Why did she work so hard?" "So Auntie Mercy could go to school. Mama said education was important. She said Auntie Mercy was smart and deserved a chance." Daniel answered innocently. There it was, the first piece of truth. "Auntie Mercy? So you're related to Miss Mercy?" James became alert, leaning forward. "Yes, sir. She's my auntie. But she pretends she doesn't know us now. I don't understand why." Daniel looked confused. "Your mama told me. She said Miss Mercy was like a stranger to her." James spoke gently. "But that's not true. Mama has pictures of them together. Mama talks about Auntie Mercy all the time. She says I look like Auntie Mercy because we're family." Daniel became frustrated, speaking with childlike honesty. James felt something cold settle in his stomach. He looked at Daniel's face, really looked, and then glanced toward the house where Mercy was visible through a window. The resemblance was undeniable. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Where's your father?" James asked slowly, carefully. Daniel shrugged. "I don't know. Mama never talks about him. She says it's just us. Me and her and Auntie Mercy. That's our family." The pieces were coming together, and James didn't like the picture they were forming. Grace lay on the thin mattress, drenched in sweat, shivering despite the warm night. She was burning with fever, barely conscious. Daniel was beside her, crying, shaking her shoulder. It happened so suddenly. One day Grace was working, and the next, her body simply gave up. The illness she'd been fighting for years finally won. "Mama! Mama! Wake up! Please wake up!" Daniel sobbed, desperate. Grace's eyes fluttered but didn't open. She was mumbling incoherently. "I have to get help!" Daniel panicked, standing up. And so the little boy who'd been ignored and hidden away in the servants' quarters finally burst into the main house, desperate to save the only mother he'd ever known. Mercy and James sat on an elegant couch. Mercy was showing James pictures on her tablet, vacation destinations. They were laughing. Then Daniel burst through the door, breathless and crying. "Please, please help! Mama is dying! She won't wake up! Please!" Daniel screamed through tears. Look at Mercy's face. See how the smile freezes? See how her hand trembles? That's guilt trying to break through the armor of lies. Mercy looked away, jaw tight, conflicted. James immediately stood, his face serious. "Show me. Now." James spoke firmly to Daniel. "James, maybe we should just call." Mercy spoke quietly, not moving. "A child is asking for help, Mercy. I'm going." James interrupted, sharp. That moment told James everything he needed to know about the woman he was going to marry. In a child's hour of need, she hesitated. James entered with Daniel. The sight shocked him. The tiny, suffocating room, the sick woman on a thin mattress. He knelt beside Grace immediately, feeling her forehead. She was burning up. "Call an ambulance. The number is on the wall in the kitchen. Run!" James spoke urgently to Daniel. Daniel ran out. Mercy appeared in the doorway, reluctant, frozen. She stared at Grace's suffering face. This was the moment Mercy could no longer hide from what she'd done. There, dying in that servant's room, was the sister who'd given her everything. "Mercy, please, come here." Grace spoke weakly, barely audible, reaching out. Even dying, Grace wanted her sister close. Mercy hesitated, tears forming despite herself. She took slow, reluctant steps forward and knelt beside the mattress, her designer dress dragging on the dirty floor. "I don't have much time. There's something you must know." Grace struggled to breathe, struggled to speak. "Sister, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please don't die. Please." Mercy's voice cracked, tears falling. Finally, she called her sister. But apologies come too late when death is already in the room. "Daniel, he's not my son." Grace spoke weakly. The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop. James and Mercy froze, staring at Grace in shock. "He's yours. When we lost our parents, you were only 16. That man took advantage of you when you were vulnerable. I told everyone Daniel was mine. I claimed him. I raised him so you wouldn't be labeled, so you could have a future, so you wouldn't be judged and ruined." Grace spoke to Mercy, using her last strength. 9 years. 9 years of sacrifice, of lies, of backbreaking work, all for Mercy. All so this ungrateful woman could have the life Grace never could. "No, sister, no. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Mercy sobbed uncontrollably, shaking her head. "I've been sick since our parents died. The grief, the stress, the hunger. But I couldn't tell you. I had to be strong. I had to make sure you finished school. I needed to see you. One last time. To make sure you'd take care of him when I'm gone." Grace's tears rolled down her face. "This child, Daniel, is yours?" James spoke, stunned, to Mercy. Mercy was unable to speak, nodding through sobs. "And you've been lying to me? To everyone? You called your own sister a pig? You made her work as your maid." James stood, horrified. The shame Mercy had been running from for 9 years finally caught up with her, and it was devastating. "I was so ashamed. I wanted to forget. I wanted to pretend it never happened. Sister, please don't leave me. I'll make it right. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll take care of Daniel. Please." Mercy broke down completely, grabbing Grace's hand. "My beautiful boy, you were never a burden. You were my purpose. You gave me a reason to keep going." Grace weakly touched Daniel's face as he returned to the room. "Mama, what do you mean? I don't understand. What's happening?" Daniel cried, confused, shaking her. "You are loved. So loved. Mercy is your real mother. She will take care of you now. Be good for her." Grace's voice was barely a whisper now. Those were the last words Grace ever spoke. At 26 years old, she'd given her whole life for someone who'd forgotten her, and yet, even dying, she loved unconditionally. Grace's hand fell limp, her eyes closed, her chest stopped rising. "Mama! Mama! Wake up! Please! Mama!" Daniel screamed, shaking her. Mercy screamed, a sound of pure anguish. James pulled Daniel away as he sobbed violently, not understanding. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, too late, and just like that, the woman who'd sacrificed everything was gone. Grace died as she lived, in poverty, in suffering, in service to someone else. A funeral gathering under gray skies. Grace's simple coffin being lowered into the ground next to their parents' graves. Mercy, in black, stood hollow-eyed, like a ghost. Daniel, also in black, refused to stand near her. He stayed with Mr. Kofi, who had his arm around the boy protectively. About 30 villagers attended, crying openly. They came from the village. People who'd known Grace. People who'd watched her sacrifice. They came to honor her, because in the village, they knew what the city forgot. James called off his engagement with Mercy, says he can't imagine spending the rest of his life with someone as heartless as she. The coffin reaches the bottom of the grave. Villagers throw flowers. Mercy tries to approach Daniel, but he turns away from her, burying his face in Mr. Kofi's shirt. Daniel blamed her. And who could say he was wrong? The only mother he'd ever known died in a servant's room, treated like nothing by the woman she'd sacrificed everything for. Mercy's knees buckle. She falls to the ground beside the grave, sobbing uncontrollably, dirt staining her expensive black dress. "I'm sorry. Sister, I'm sorry! Please forgive me! I'm so sorry!" Mercy screamed through tears to the grave. But sorry is just a word, and the dead don't hear apologies. James sits on the couch, distant, jaw tight. Mercy enters slowly, still in her funeral clothes, eyes swollen and red from crying. She looks broken. When they returned to the mansion, it felt different. Colder. Emptier. Like the walls themselves were judging Mercy for what she'd done. "James, we need to talk," Mercy said, voice hoarse, sitting far from James. "I've been waiting for you to be honest with me," James said coldly, not looking at her. James was a good man. But good men have limits, and Mercy had crossed every single one. Everything Grace said was true. Daniel is my son. When I was 16, right after our parents died, a man from the neighboring village. He said he would help us. He said he'd give us money for food. But instead, Mercy said, taking a shaky breath, hands trembling. She can't continue. She covers her face and cries. She'd been a child. Vulnerable. Taken advantage of in her darkest moment. That part wasn't her fault. But what came after? That was. Grace was only 17, but she protected me. She told everyone the baby was hers. That she'd been with some boy from the next village who'd run away. She took all the shame, all the judgment, all the whispers. She let them call her names. While I went to school like nothing happened, Mercy said, continuing through tears. And when you made it to the city, when you got this job, this life, this money, James asked, voice hard. I wanted to forget where I came from. I was ashamed of my past, of being poor, of having a child so young. When I saw her at the gate, I panicked. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd leave me, that everyone would see me as some village girl who got pregnant as a teenager, Mercy said, ashamed, looking at the floor. Shame. It's a poison that makes us do unthinkable things. It made Mercy deny the woman who loved her most in the world. So you let your sister, The woman who sacrificed her entire life for you. Work as your maid? You watched her scrub floors? You watched her serve us dinner? You saw how sick she was, and you did nothing, James said, standing abruptly, angry now. I know. I'm a monster. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve anything, Mercy sobbed. You're right. You don't, James said, voice shaking with rage. He walks to a drawer, pulls out the engagement ring box, and places it on the coffee table between them with a heavy thud. That small sound, the ring box hitting the table, was the sound of Mercy's world crumbling. Grace showed me what real love looks like, selfless, sacrificial, unconditional. She loved you even when you treated her like garbage. She protected your secret even as she died, James continued. He pauses, looking at Mercy with a mixture of disgust and pity. You showed me what I never want in a partner. Someone who forgets where they came from. Someone who values appearances over humanity. Someone who treats people as disposable when they're no longer useful. James, please, Mercy said, desperately reaching for him. Don't. That little boy just lost the only mother he's ever known because of your shame, your cowardice, your selfishness, and you can never undo that. She's gone, forever. And it's your fault, James said, stepping back, firm. The truth hurts, but lies hurt more. And James had had enough of Mercy's lies. What should I do? Mercy said, barely able to speak. Be the mother Grace believed you could be. Honor her sacrifice. Raise that boy with the love she showed you. It's the only way you'll ever make this right. If you even can, James said at the door, pausing. He walks out, closing the door quietly behind him. Mercy collapses on the couch, sobbing. And so Mercy was alone, surrounded by wealth and luxury, but completely, utterly alone. Funny how that works, isn't it? A beautifully decorated guest bedroom that's been prepared for Daniel. Expensive toys, new clothes, everything a child could want. But Daniel sits on the bed in his old clothes, clutching a framed photo of Grace, ignoring everything else. Mercy stands at the doorway, afraid to enter. Mercy had given Daniel a palace, but what he wanted was the small mud brick house in the village, with his mama, with Grace. Daniel, can we talk? Mercy said softly, voice trembling. You're not my mama, Daniel said, not looking at her, voice hard for an 8-year-old. 3 words, simple, devastating. No, I'm not. Grace was your mama in every way that mattered. She loved you more than life itself, Mercy said, entering slowly, sitting on the floor far from the bed. Then why did you treat her like that? She loved you. She talked about you every day. She said you were good and smart and kind. But you were mean to her, Daniel said, finally looking at her, tears in his eyes, angry, out of the mouths of children. Sometimes they see the truth more clearly than adults ever could. Because I was selfish. I was a coward. I was so afraid of people knowing the truth about me that I hurt the person who loved me most. Your mama, Grace. She was braver at 17 than I've ever been in my whole life, Mercy said, crying, struggling to explain. She said you would take care of me before she, Daniel said, clutching the photo tighter. He can't say it. He breaks down, crying. He was 8 years old. 8. And he just watched his entire world collapse. I don't deserve you, Daniel. I know that. But I want to try. I want to be the person Grace believed I could be. Not for me. For her. To honor her memory, Mercy said, moving slightly closer, but not touching him. She was sick for a long time, wasn't she? Daniel asked quietly, still looking at the photo. Yes, she was, Mercy said, nodding, wiping tears. She never told me. She always said she was just tired, I should have known. I should have helped her more, Daniel said, voice breaking. No, baby, that wasn't your job. You were a child. You are a child. Grace wanted you to just be a kid. That's why she worked so hard. So you could have a childhood, Mercy said, shaking her head. For the first time, Mercy spoke with honesty, with humility, with something resembling the woman Grace had hoped she'd become. Mama said you were smart, that you went to university because of her, Daniel said, looking at her finally. She gave me everything, and I gave her nothing in return. Nothing but pain, Mercy said, voice cracking. She would want you to be good. She always said you were good inside. Even when you were mean, she made excuses for you, Daniel said, studying her face. That's who Grace was. Making excuses for people who didn't deserve them. Seeing good where there was only selfishness. Long silence. Daniel stared at the photo of Grace, his small fingers tracing her face through the glass. Mercy waited, hardly breathing, afraid to break whatever fragile moment this was. Can I still call her Mama, even though she wasn't? Daniel asked, voice small. Oh, sweetheart. She was your mama, in every way that matters. Blood doesn't make a mother. Love does. And she loved you more than anything in this world, Mercy said, fresh tears falling. Daniel nodded slowly, clutching the photo to his chest. And you? What should I call you? He asked, finally meeting her eyes. The question hung in the air, heavy, loaded with pain and possibility. Whatever you're comfortable with. I'm your biological mother, but I haven't earned the right to that title. Grace earned it. She lived it every single day. Mercy said, honest, raw. Mama Grace used to tell me stories about when you were young, about how you'd share one sweet potato between you and save the bigger half for her, about how you'd walk her to school when she was scared. She said you used to be kind, Daniel said. Mercy's heart shattered. Grace had remembered the good. Even after everything, Grace had told Daniel about the sister she used to be, not the monster she'd become. I was. Once. And I want to be again. For you. For her memory, Mercy said. Mama Grace said everyone makes mistakes. She said the important thing is to learn from them and do better, Daniel said, looking back at the photo. Wisdom from beyond the grave. Grace was still teaching, still guiding, even in death. She was right. She was right about everything, Mercy said, voice breaking. I miss her, Daniel whispered. I do too. So much, Mercy said. They sat in silence, two people drowning in grief, slowly reaching for the same life raft. The village. 3 months later. Mercy and Daniel stand at Grace's grave. It now has a proper headstone. Mercy had used her own money to give Grace what she'd never had in life, something permanent, something dignified. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it can teach us to live with them. Mercy was learning this the hard way. The headstone read, Grace Mensa, beloved sister, devoted mother. She lived for others. Simple words, but they contained an entire life of sacrifice. I brought your favorite flowers, Mama, Daniel said, placing fresh hibiscus on the grave. He called Grace Mama, and likely always would. Mercy had made peace with that. Grace had earned that title through 9 years of love and sacrifice. Sister, I'm keeping my promise. Daniel is in school now, a good school. He's so smart, just like you always said he was. He's learning to read and write. His teacher says he's the best student in his class, Mercy said, kneeling beside the grave. She came here every week, rain or shine. It was the least she could do. He asks about you every day. He keeps your photo by his bed. He tells everyone about his Mama Grace, the bravest woman who ever lived, Mercy continued, voice thick with emotion. The wind rustled through the trees, Birds sang in the distance. Life continued, indifferent to human suffering. I sold the mansion. I couldn't stay there. Too many memories of my cruelty. We moved to a smaller house in the village, near Mr. Kofi. Daniel needs to be around people who knew you, who loved you. He needs to remember where he comes from, Mercy said. She'd given up her expensive lifestyle. The designer clothes, the parties, the pretense. None of it meant anything without her sister. I'm working as a teacher now, at the village school. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work. And every day, I try to be the person you believed I could be. The person I was before. Shame made me forget who I was, Mercy continued. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. At 8 years old, he was learning to comfort the adult who should have been comforting him. She can hear you, he said softly. I hope so. I have so much to tell her. So much to apologize for, Mercy said, looking up at him. Mama Grace used to say that love isn't just a feeling, it's actions. She said you show love by what you do, not what you say, Daniel said. More wisdom from Grace. Even in death, she was the moral compass they all needed. She was the smartest person I ever knew, and I was too foolish to see it, Mercy said, standing, taking Daniel's hand. They stood together in silence, two people bound by loss and love, learning to rebuild. Can we come back next week? Daniel asked as they walked away. We'll come every week, for as long as you need, Mercy said, squeezing his hand. And you? Do you need to come? He asked, looking up at her with Grace's eyes. Smart boy, perceptive, just like his mama. Yes, I'll always need to come, to remember, to honor her, to remind myself of what real love looks like, Mercy said. As they walked through the village, people greeted them, not with judgment, but with quiet acceptance. Mercy had confessed everything to the village elders. She'd asked for no forgiveness, expected no grace, but they'd given it anyway, because that's what Grace would have wanted. The village school, Mercy stands in front of a classroom full of children. She's teaching them to read. Her clothes are simple now. No designer labels, no expensive jewelry, just honest, humble work. This was redemption, not grand or glamorous, just daily acts of service, trying to repay a debt that could never truly be repaid. Miss Mercy, can you tell us another story about the brave woman? A little girl asked, raising her hand. The children loved hearing about Grace. Mercy made sure Grace's story was told, again and again, so her sacrifice would never be forgotten. Yes, let me tell you about the bravest woman I ever knew. Her name was Grace, and she was my sister, Mercy said, smiling sadly. And so Mercy told the story, about sacrifice, about love, about a young woman who gave up everything for someone who'd given her nothing in return. She told the story, so the children would understand what real love looked like, so they'd know that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear worn-out clothes and work until their bodies give out. Sometimes they die in servants' quarters, having never asked for anything in return. That evening, the small house, Mercy now shared with Daniel, simple but clean, comfortable but modest. They sat at a small table, eating a simple meal together. How was school today? Mercy asked. Good. I learned a new poem. Want to hear it? Daniel said, eyes brightening. I'd love to, Mercy said, smiling. As Daniel recited his poem, Mercy watched him. This boy, this beautiful, smart, kind boy, was Grace's legacy. And Mercy would spend the rest of her life making sure he knew he was loved, not to replace Grace, never to replace her, but to honor her memory by being the mother Grace had always believed Mercy could be. Later that night, Mercy stood in Daniel's doorway, watching him sleep. The photo of Grace was on his nightstand, as always. I'm trying, sister. Every day I'm trying. To be better, to be worthy of the sacrifice you made. I know I can never repay you, But I promise you, this. Daniel will grow up knowing he was loved, knowing he mattered, knowing his Mama Grace was the greatest person who ever lived, Mercy whispered into the darkness. The photo seemed to smile back at her. Maybe it was just the moonlit.